Joined in studio by IPC leader Dr. Panduleni Itula, who was, of course, also a liberation struggle fighter himself in many respects during the 70s and the 80s, also heading out into exile as well. And we're reflecting a little bit on that time with the late president as well. Dr. Itula, I wanted to just take a step back. I know that there was always a conversation around that we were actually supposed to get our independence in 1978, but there were certain demands that the founding father was quite staunch and steadfast about in terms of how he wants to see this democracy unfold. Reflect a little bit on that pause in 78 and now coming into the 80s where you had to really start shaping things for the independence of Namibia.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't forget that there was Resolution 365 of 1976, one of the other resolutions that describe how Namibia comes to independence as well. And we must remember also there was the contact group, France, German,
the Western contact group.
Yeah, the contact group, the negotiating group from the West, France, German, Canada, United Kingdom, and the United States of America. And that contact group did come about because it was suggested that initially the Western said that, yeah, you people are leaning too much to the East. And said, well, what did you do to assist us? We came to you to say, don't support apartheid regime. And, you know, Peter Kachavi will reflect much, much better on that one as my mentor as well. And that's where I got the picture from. And then in 78, 435 was then passed. And at that time, we were preparing for the campaign for the independence. But there was one tricky situation, and that is the situation of the South African troops in Namibia. Where should they be? They wanted to be somewhere in Grootfontein, and the argument was, hang on a minute, you know, chaps, you are going home. Go all the way home. And there was a little bit in the negotiation, because remember, there was the armed struggle, there was the diplomatic struggle, there was the mobilization struggle inside Namibia that we were engaged in, and we were fed information as to what we need to prepare in order to prepare for the independence. And we had to mobilize inside the country itself to prepare for the independence process that was going to take place. But of course, that was halted until much later. And in 1978 as well, you will recall that there was a formulation of the type of skeleton of the constitution that was going to be adopted in Namibia, proposed by the contact group, by the 5 contact group that was then coming from the Security Council and to the Secretary General, and for them to say that this should be some of the principles that must be reflected in the Namibian constitution.
What do you make of this? Because I like the way you put it, where you say, look, there were a number of the struggle was on a number of fronts, you know, diplomatic on one end, mobilization here on the ground, so military action there as well. But particularly during the time now in exile, meeting him in London, reflect a little bit on his leadership style in as far as mobilizing international support is concerned, and how it also engaged with some of the non-governmental organizations or non-state actors.
Yeah, I think it would be unfair to, because I haven't actually encountered him a lot of times, but for him to actually take time and to say, I've heard that the SWAPO party flag was hosted by the anti-apartheid movement with the Namibian Support Committee inside the United Kingdom, and he made an effort to come and address the people in Sheffield in the town hall. Now, within the United Kingdom, from 1981 when I went down there, every time that there is a meeting, you'll find that Comrade Sharper at the head office or Comrade Jacob Hanai will send out a message to say, could you go and address these people? Can you go and address these miners, etc.? So we used to go out in the morning to our educational institutions, and in the afternoon you've got the political bag and you go around, and trains and buses, etc., to speak to the populace as well. And sometimes when there are events like the Nottingham Carnival as well, we would join them, but promoting the independence of the Republic of Namibia as SWAPO members and SWAPO students at that time as well, especially with Comrade Beans Kavanas, Abraham Yambo, loads of other people, Zoom Bakwe and all the others, including our Judge President Damasep as well, and also Honorable Utoni Nujoma, who later on came to Warwick University to study law as well. So the students in the UK were not only studying, they were actually campaigning and mobilizing and also supporting each other and supporting the liberation struggle. And there was also the campaign for medical aid for refugee settlements in Angola and in Zambia as well, that a lot of the students were engaged as well. And every time that you go to address people, they will offer money, they will give checks addressed to SWAPO, of course. So we had to do that as well. But the significant thing is this, that there was a leader who was not in Namibia, but was crisscrossing all over the whole world to try and prompt up support. And at the same time, that support was on all three fronts: education for Namibians, military support, diplomatic support. And you need to look at the leaders that we have in Namibia as well, and those that passed on, such as our late President, Dr. Hage Gottfried Kenkop. He mentored so many of them. And I always say that when His Excellency came from exile to start the government, he was spoiled with talent. He was spoiled with capacity. He had everyone else to pick. There was a government already sitting, ready. Although there was never a government in exile, there was a government ready, sitting to come and take over. So, but his role was more inspirational. We stood at Covent Garden singing, Nujoma, Tukwatela Commission, all these songs that we have sung in the liberation struggle then. So it was only after independence, when I started now planning to come back, that I first went to his farm at Etunda in 2008. That was the very first encounter. And I came there and he said, "What time is he going to come?" And I said, "I'll come at 10 o'clock. And he prepared everybody else and said, "Yeah, this comrade from London, he will be here on time, watch out." And then Asino met me at the kraal of the cattle to take him to him. And we spent 3 hours talking with him, the two of us. There's a picture of me with him just sitting on the couch, talking and talking. And I remember asking him, "Comrade President, why did you decide to step down as president of the party?" He said, "Well, some of us are designed for certain times, and when those times comes in, we have to, of course, to move on and give other comrades to take over." And then in 2008, I was still in the United Kingdom, and he asked me the question and said, "Are you armed?" I said, "What do you mean, Comrade President?" He said, "Do you understand law?" I said, "No, I'm a maxillofacial surgeon, I operate on the jaws, etc." He said, "No, you need, if you've got an opportunity, to go and study a bit of law. We liberated the country, a few compromises, but these people are squeezing us with the legal bits here." So that's when I went to go and study law as well.
As we're closing off the chat, I think I will be doing it injustice if I don't ask this question. But we know, of course, it was that conversion from being a commander of a liberation movement, and now the advent of independence and switching now your leadership from being a military commander now to coming in and becoming a president that must uphold these democratic ideals, following of the rule of law, not ostracizing political opponents, etc. Just speak to me about his legacy that he leaves behind in the country around political tolerance and freedom for one to practice different political ideologies within this country without really being ostracized. If you look at it since independence, nobody has been jailed or locked up for having a completely different view or extrajudicial political killings taking place here in the country. Just in conclusion, if you can reflect on that.
We need to understand that Comrade Sam Nujoma was a custodian of our Namibian constitution that provided us that very democratic principles that we believe in. And one thing that really struck me, given the history of political parties being formed, is the fact that when I stood as an independent presidential candidate, I did not see the famous pointing finger of Tatekulu condemning me or condemning anything. He did not voice anything about Dr. Itula as an independent presidential candidate. But when you go back to the other COD, RDP, there was quite a time that he was pointing fingers to them. But for some reasons here, he embraced the democratic principles and allowed us to freely exercise our political activities, irrespective of which political party. The formation of IPC was demonstrative there too as well. After IPC was formed, we have not had a single voice from His departed Excellency against the will of the Namibian people wherever they are to exercise their political activities. And we need to underscore that he embraced us all as a father figure, and he went into retirement and allowed everyone else to flourish in this environment of political freedom. When you go to other countries, we did not have that. And that is one thing that we as Namibians constantly united under that principle of our departed leader, we must remember. Every time that we feel that we are falling by the way, think about that embracing big hand of the founding father that keeps us together. And we need to remember to continue to do so and maintain the peace that he fought so hard. He sacrificed not only his own youth, he left at the age of 33, he sacrificed his own marriage, leaving children, young children, in old location when he left this country. He sacrificed his own education, rather prompting other people up to go and study. He could have decided, let me be selfish and go and study. He was a selfless leader, a negotiator, a patient leader, consistent leader who persevered over the many years of being in exile until independence. So we've got a gem of a leader that we must really keep really to our hearts.
Thank you very much, Dr. Itula,
Thank you very
for
much.
making time out to just come and talk to us and reflect a little bit. It's not always, it's not very often that we hear about some of the inner workings, particularly before independence, when it comes to the party and our different leaders as well. So thank you for making time out to be with us today.
Thank you very much.